Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Unstoppable Dad Project. So this week, a little bit of exciting news. I'm recording this. I am doing a video version of the podcast that I'll be uploading to YouTube. I'll also upload it to Facebook as well too, but you can see who's behind the microphone. You can see myself. And as we do more interviews, and especially if they're with people, I'll make sure that I record them and upload them. Just be aware that this is a one-man band type deal. I'm the only one doing this. I'm doing all the editing. I do try and keep these podcasts unedited start to finish. So you'll notice that from the video point of view, there's no skips, there's no missed things. If I stumble on my words, you get to see all of it. So it's basically me recording it on camera or recording it on the microphone and just uploading exactly what I've said. One of the reasons for that is I've listened to a lot of podcasts over the last pretty well decade, and I believe the ones that are kind of a little bit raw and a little bit unedited are a little bit more genuine. And what we are trying to do here is, provide an insight into obviously my life and the people that I work to, I'm talking to or I work with, my experiences, my stumbles, my falls, my triumphs as well too, and also some tips and tricks that hopefully can help you out if you feel like you're struggling or if you feel like you need help. So by keeping it unedited all the way start to finish, I think it gives you guys a little bit more of an insight into exactly the process that I go through and my thoughts around whatever the topics are for that particular podcast. So you'll be able to access this one via video. You'll also be able to access this through all the normal podcast platforms. So Spotify, Apple, Google, all those other things. So as I always do, just asking you to help us share this podcast out with anyone who you think may get some value from what we do. So if you've got any friends, family members that you think are going to get some info, some good info or some entertainment out of this particular podcast, please share it around. Make sure you've subscribed and liked us on all the socials. So Facebook, Instagram, and now also on YouTube as well too. And jump on and give us a like. So today, I wanted to talk about stress and how needed it can be to actually progress. And the reason for this is I was talking to a client yesterday and we were having a chat about training and within training, and I guess within life, there's a saying, you've got to stress to progress. And when it comes to training, so whether it be somebody trying to build strength, so strength training, like some of the things that we do within the Unstoppable Dad Project, it be rehab work, you need to actually put the body under an adequate amount of stress to elicit a growth result. And that means from the point of view, and we're working with this person now from a rehab standpoint. And one of the frustrations that they've had when they've worked with rehab is, they've done the early stage rehab. And for us, when I work with somebody in-house from a rehab point of view, and we do it online as well, where we come in late stage rehab, right? So early stage rehab, you're generally going to, especially if you're coming off surgery, you'll work with the surgeon and then you'll go ahead and work with the physio, and then we come in after that. And a lot of the frustration we get with people is they go from a surgeon sometimes to an exercise physiologist or alike. What they do is they see them once a week, and they see them once a week for a 4 or 6 week period, which in the early stages is really needed. And then what happens is that physio EP or that professional that they've gone and seen will give them a bunch of exercises. Anybody that's been to a physio or been through rehabbing an injury will be quite familiar with this process, right? You'll go through, you'll get the recommendation from the person. They'll generally give you, they might give you 4 to 6 exercises, and they'll tell you to do like 10 to 20 reps of each, and they'll tell you to do it, once or twice a day. And it's basically do exactly the same thing over and then come back and see me next week. And what'll happen is, for a lot of people, is it'll get better to a point, and then they'll keep getting prescribed the same exercises and the same rep schemes, and it gets better to a point, and then there's no further improvement from there. And one of the reasons is, what'll happen is you'll get the appropriate stimulus and the appropriate stress to get you stronger to the point, and then your body's adapted to that. And then in order to continue to elicit change, you need to then go and have extra stimulus. So whether that be adding external resistance or upping the rep range, or there's a whole multitude of ways that we can kind of up the intensity, and just incrementally when it comes to rehab, it's incrementally ratcheting up that intensity so that we're not aggravating the injury, we're not causing excess pain, but we are giving the body enough stimulus, so we're stressing it enough to progress. And that was what the conversation was about. It was that, you know, the early stage stuff when people are doing those exercises is necessary, because we can't just go and we can't load them up. Someone's coming back from knee injury. I've got a lot of clients that I work with where they're coming back from knee injuries, a lot of who have done them doing jujitsu, which, you know, is, for those of you that have listened to the podcast before, is something that is a big part of my life. Um, but you know, they've gone through the surgery, they've done the surgery, and then they've come and seen us, and I work with them late stage rehab. And you know, we're just not going to load them up and do like a 60 or 80 kilo back squat fresh out of surgery. You need to do that light impact stuff, and you need to go through that early stage rehab, which is where like physios and stuff come in. But then when they're only giving you one prescription and it's only getting you to a point, but then we're not progressing it past that point, there's not enough stress in what you're doing to actually progress the system and continue the improvement that you need in order to make the injury stronger, the ligaments, the tendons, and the muscles around that injured area, to keep you getting stronger, not only to the level you were pre-injury, but also to get you stronger than what you were past that point, so that the reoccurrence of that injury happening is minimal. And within this conversation, it got me thinking about just stress in general, right? And firstly, how crippling stress can be. And I've kind of spoken about my journey a bit, you know, when I first become a dad, how the stress of everything became essentially crippling, where I was spiraling down into what some people may have called depression. I did have suicidal thoughts at different points and things like that. But the stress, the level of stress that was going on within my life was crippling, and it forced me to stagnate. It forced me to hide from a lot of things that I shouldn't have been hiding from. And for the most part, it stopped me from taking action on a lot of stuff that I should have just been taking action on. And I've spoken about that on a previous podcast. I think it's maybe episode 4, if you're looking to go back and listen to that. But you know, the thing is, when we're trying to progress ourselves and better ourselves, like when it comes from a training point of view, we actually need some level of stress to progress, because whatever actions, habits, and behaviors that you are taking to this point have gotten you the result in whatever aspect of your life you're looking at this from. And you can kind of compartmentalize this into different aspects of your life. And I do it at times too, where, you know, you've got maybe your training, maybe you've got your nutrition, then you've got professionally, then you've got personally. And we've got the results that we've gotten to these points in all of our lives. And we look at that, and it's like whatever actions, habits, and behaviors we've taken have gotten us to that level. And it's like the physio exercises, right? Like, it's going to get us better to a point. But then if we're not quite happy with the lot that we've got in different aspects of our life, we need to add a little bit more stress to progress it up to that next level. But there is an element where if we make the stress too much, like when we're talking about rehabbing from injury and we're doing these things to try and make ourselves better, the risk of injury, and for some of us in our life, like that injury is mental, like it's that mental downward spiral, that quicksand feeling where we can't feel like we're getting out of it, can be too much. And the fact is, stress can be looked at as a good thing, and it can be looked at as a bad thing. And my personal philosophy on it is it depends on the dosage. Like, it depends on how much we're giving ourselves. And stress can be, I believe, it can be self-inflicted. I know from my experience, when I was going through that kind of spiral, and any hard time that I've gone through mentally, if I stand back and I look at it, it can be self-inflicted, and it's a hard thing. It's a very hard thing. for a lot of people to disengage and look back and try and get a bird's eye view on what's going on in their life, because you're so caught up in what's in the thick of it. So it's a very hard thing to do. But I guess what I wanted to get to is sometimes if we change, and what I've found really helpful for me is changing my perspective around the stress that I'm getting and thinking about, all right, I'm getting this stress or I'm feeling this stress around a particular situation. And if I get that, if I let that stress like filter out about one thing, because like, let's say, for example, I'll use an example of something that's happened to me recently, like bit of stress around business. We run a small business and we've been doing it in a COVID world since, last year, which if there's any small business owners that are listening to this, I don't need to tell you about how stressful that has been. Like the uncertainty of it all, and I won't bother going into it, but the stupidity of some of the government decisions here in Australia and how they're treating small business. It's been a nightmare. It doesn't allow you to plan, and it's quite a hard thing to try and get a hold of. So there's been times over the last really like 18 months where I've let that stress around the business filter into other aspects of my life, filter into my training, filter into my personal life. And as a result, it's brought the results down in other things that I've previously been happy about. But by stepping back and looking at the stress and where I'm feeling that stress, I've been able to go, right, it's around this, and almost compartmentalize that. And then when I've compartmentalized that and realized what I'm feeling the stress about, I then start to look at, all right, what do I need to do to change this? So how can I start to move this forward so that even if I still feel a little bit of stress and anxiety, and it's natural to feel that, I've at least got I've at least got a plan to try and move myself away from it. And a lot of the times that plan is going to be something that I haven't done before. Because at the end of the day, if I'm feeling stress around something and I'm getting a result within that area of my life, and I can't get myself out of it with the actions that I'm taking around that particular thing right now, then what I need to do is I need to change the actions around that. And it may just be one thing. It may be taking more action, like from a business point of view. It may be being more succinct with like my lead follow up so we can get a few more clients. It may be changing a marketing campaign. It may be doing stuff like that. If I'm talking about it from what some people I work with deal with in regards to, implementing some form of health and lifestyle regime that maybe they're not doing because they're unhappy with how they're feeling physically, and that's feeding into their mental. You can't continue to do the same actions or same inactions that you're doing and expect everything to change. You have to go and get a plan. And sometimes, and a lot of the time, especially when you're very deep in that cycle, like you've almost feel like you've been sucked down to the bottom. And this was a big changing point for me. And I've spoken about this on the podcast, is actually getting help from somebody to help you formulate a plan. Because the hardest part when we're in that high stress environment is to disengage, stand back, and take that bird's eye view. So by having somebody do that for us and help us with a plan and an action step, it can help. But then when we start to take those action steps, this is another stress, okay? Because we've got to add something in. We've got to change our behavior, or we've got to, and there's a couple of things that goes through, especially a man's mind. There's the ego thing where it's like, I feel like a failure because I've been working so hard on this thing and I just haven't got that result. And I need somebody else to tell me what to do. And it's not a failure at all. It's just a course adjustment. And if we don't take that ego out of it and let somebody help us, then we're not going to get out of that hole. So going and getting some help from a professional, if needed be, from, I think that whatever aspect you need help with, going and getting help from somebody within that field. So if it is your health and fitness, go and engage the services of, a personal trainer or a gym, so that they can help you build out that plan. And if they're not talking to you, if that's the area that you feel you want to bring up and you're getting some stress and anxiety and bad feelings around yourself about that, if they're not just talking to you about being consistent and they're trying to make it too complicated, maybe the stress is going to be too much, but they're going to have to get you to stress yourself a little bit from the actions, habits, and behaviors you're taking in order to progress you in the right direction and in order for you to level up. If it's something like business, going and looking at getting a business coach to help you build out that plan, these are all things that when you're so in it and you're so stressed about things, you just need to do. You just it's just for some of us, it's the only way we can disengage and look back on what's going on, and then that will help you build the tools and build those things to hopefully reduce the level of stress, so that then you can start taking some action to build to where you want to go, to level up within your health and wellness, to level up within your personal life, to level up within your business. But when it comes to stress can be a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing. There needs to be enough stress for us to change our actions and change our levels and behaviors so that we can level up to where we want to go. But you also want to make sure that that stress isn't too much, that it's paralyzing and it's stopping you from taking action. And I guess the underlying thing here is, if you feel overwhelmed and you feel like you're stressed, number one, depending on what level that is for you, and if it's super high and it's something you've been dealing with for a long time, reach out and get some help. Can't emphasize that enough. I've said that. I've lost count of how many times I've said that on the podcast, but you need to do it, because I've been there. I've been to a point where it is so high that you just feel like there's no other way out. If that is you, I implore you, reach out and get some help. Talk to somebody. But if it's a moderate level, but it feels like it's building, and you have the ability to pull yourself, the mental ability to pull yourself out of it and look at it, start to think about what actions you need to take to reduce that. And that's and there is levels, because if we were looking at, it's here, and this is the actions this is where I am, and these are the actions I need to take. This is probably enough stress for me to deal with so that I can take little bit of actions to build myself there. And then I get to here, and then I'll try and implement a little more, and then I'll build up and here. And that's the way, that's good stress. That's stressing yourself enough to progress each time. And then when you get to that level, you add a little bit more. And that's essentially that's resistance training. It's progressive overload, and it can filter into other aspects of your life. But then it's here, and I've got this gap, but it's enough for me to maybe pull myself out of it for a little bit and look at chunking it down so that I then can bring the amount of stress I feel down to here, and I can build up to here, and then I can go to that level, and I've broken it down into, say, 2 components, and I've got an action plan to reduce this amount or to bring myself up so that this is no longer a stressful situation. But then that last level is here. And there is so much going on from one to the other where that stress has now become bad. It's become paralyzing, and I don't know how to chunk this down. And trust me, I've been there. I understand it. I get it. And when you're a dad and you've got so many other things on your plate, when the stress in one aspect of your life gets to this level, it will. And if you're feeling it right now, I'm sure that it has already filtered into other aspects of your life. And that's the point where you're going to need somebody to help chunk it down. You're going to need somebody to help bring it down and make it manageable. And that's important. And as I've said before, when I've done, mental health podcasts talking about these types of things and my feelings and my emotions and the things that I've been through, help's important. If you can get it, if you've got access to it, go and get it. There are free ways to get it, like be able to talk to a counselor and things like that if you're in Australia through the government. So that's a thing to look out for. Just bear in mind, I'm obviously not a psychologist. I'm not a counselor. What I'm talking about is stuff from my experience. Everyone has a very, very different experience when it comes to this stuff. This is not meant to be medical advice. It is just meant to give you an insight into some things that I have done and I have used to try and help myself. And sometimes it is about how we look at stress, because stress can be a good thing. You need to have enough stress in your life to make sure that you are able to progress, but not so much that it's paralyzing. If you're feeling it, if you want to, reach out. Feel free to reach out to me. Happy to talk to anybody. If you're on the Sunshine Coast, which is where I'm located, I am in the process of, and I'll release more details of this over the course of the next week. We are going to do an in-house program at my gym for dads on the Sunshine Coast. So if you're watching this and you've gotten to the end of it and you are interested in being a part of it, we are going to do the first intake of it at 50% off what we would normally charge, heavily discounted, just so we can get some dads in, we can get them going. So we will be selective with who we are going to let in, because we want to make sure people are going to stick to it. But we'll be running an 8-week program, which will be specifically designed for dads. It will be around health and wellness, and it's going to be, so if you're on the Sunshine Coast. If you're not on the Sunshine Coast and you'd like to jump in on it, we will have a remote version of that as well. But I'm pretty excited to be launching this as an in-person thing. So if you're interested, reach out. In the show notes, if you're listening to this as a podcast, I will put some links where you can either reach out to us on Facebook or Instagram, and also our email address. If you are watching this on YouTube, they will be in the description below. So thanks, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. As I said at the start, like, share, subscribe, a little bit of guerrilla marketing, share it around with your friends. Help us grow this. Looking forward to seeing or having you all listen again next week.